So the idea is that we can hopefully, over the course of time, become on that same page. What you'll find, and I think this was the experience from last year's sessions, we all have the same thoughts in our heads, but we all process those thoughts in different ways. And so when it comes out of our mouths, there's different words that are used based on our experiences and our degree of knowledge. So the idea is, I'm not saying that, for example, what Shoaib and I are saying or what other brothers would say or sisters would say is the best thing, but it's one thing. And I think it's something made from an effort. And so if we work towards sort of centralizing on that effort and exercising those words and that way of thinking and that way of presentation, then we can become together on that same level. And then beyond that, what we can do is also over the time evolve that thought and evolve that process. So for example, if I'm saying one thing in a particular way, and then another brother or another sister or a child or an uncle or somebody like that has a better way of explaining that same thing, then it's for all of us to be open to growing ourselves. Hopefully this is definitely better. Okay. Now I don't have to scream. Is that okay? All right, thank you. So I think, where was I up to? So we have to remain open. I think that's one of the big points that we need to make sure that we keep up with, that whatever we're explaining, whatever process, whatever thought we're trying to sort of explain to you or convey to you here to get everybody on the same, I won't say level, but on the same wavelength, that's open to change as well. So somebody here might suggest something to us and we think, look, I think that's probably a better way of describing it. It's a better way of explaining it. It's a better way that somebody might sort of catch on to it. I mean, from last year's session, one of the big things that I took out of it is I was going on I talk a lot, okay? So I was going on a rant about stuff and it ended up linking to 9/11. And when I was saying it, there were people in the room and they had blank faces, and I thought, how can you have blank faces about 9/11? Everybody knows 9/11. And then I realized that there's literally people now who this year would be 19 years old or 18 years old. They're adults, they're eligible to vote, and they weren't born when 9/11 happened. So it's a huge difference. And so now that's my age, that's my generation. And so those people may have a different perspective. And if we are not open to that perspective, then we may not be able to convey the message of Imam Hussain in the best way possible. Okay? Shoaib?
I just want to add two more things to it. So basically, thank you. So basically the whole idea that we are trying to basically portray over here is that, we all are passionate about Imam Hussain. We all are passionate about Imam Hussain and his message, to spread his message across, right? But the main thing is that we are talking with, you need to understand that when you are talking in a public area, any type of person can come and interact with you. And that person will not have any background about Imam Hussain as you, all of us, we have. Because we have been listening about him and Karbala from when we were very young, right? And he has no clue about him. You have to introduce him, the personality of Imam Hussain and the event of Karbala from scratch to him, right? Because he don't know anything about it. That may be the case, right? So the main thing is, that's why what the theme that we are trying to bring in this, the next procession, is more about bringing Imam Hussain into humanity level, right? Humanity is the level which is more like towards humanity interfaith, right? That's why you see over here the kind of things that we are trying to portray, because there will be a digital screen in front of the procession, and that digital screen will be containing the slogans like that you can see below here, like Hussain, the sacrifice for mankind. So the theme is that Hussain is for humanity, Hussain is for above all religions, because his message is really above all religions, right? Because all religions basically are source-wise, as what we believe, is Islam anyway. From Adam to Prophet Muhammad, they all brought Islam, but it has been distorted in different names and then become different religions, right? So in the end of the day, his message is across all the religions that we have. Similarly, in terms of humanity, as I said, and in terms of humanity, the main thing is that his message is again against any oppression that's happening, against any tyrant that is in the world. And that is why the famous phrase that we have is every day is Ashura and every day is Karbala, because every day there is oppression, every day there is tyranny going on around the world, and this is how we want to relate to it. So if you come back here and take this, I want to show them the flyer. So I'll just show you a few of the slides. Like this is like one of the slides, for example, in terms of interfaith, right? So what we are saying here is that the lesson of Imam Hussain is not only for Shias or Muslims, but for the all justice seekers anywhere. Similarly, we are also bringing few more things into the play where we are taking things related to other faiths, like especially like Bible. Excellent. So here you see. Sorry. Okay, thank you. So here you see, this is, we are trying to bring the comparison between John the Baptist and Imam Hussain. And John the Baptist is who? Prophet Yahya, right? So Prophet Yahya and Imam Hussain, they all basically are same message, different times. Similarly, as you see over here we are trying to bring more similarities into it. So you see that the title, you see they are coming from the noble family. They both are appointed leaders from God, and they both got killed, beheaded, unjustified. And then the killer was born illegitimately for both of them. This is the hadith of Imam Jafar Sadiq about this. And then the sky wept blood for both of them, right? So if you see, the symbols are also very, very near to each other somehow. The symbol of Prophet Yahya in Christianity, as well as the symbol that we have created for Imam Hussain. Similarly, this is a prophecy of Karbala in Bible, the Old Testament. There is a book called Jeremiah. Jeremiah is a prophet that we also believe of, and this is a book for him, and this is the scroll that we have for him, basically. So this is basically kind of prophecy of the event of Karbala in Bible. So this is the kind of things that we are just trying to portray this year. And then Irfan is here. So I need to switch.
Should I add to that?
Yeah, you can add to it. Switch.
So just to sort of fill in a little bit in relation to that as well, the reason why we're doing this is we always ask ourselves, what is the link? Because if you're going to somebody and you're taking out possession, you're trying to explain to people about Imam Hussain, why? I mean, if I'm a standard person on the middle of the street, I don't know anything about Islam, I don't know anything about Imam Hussain, I don't know anything about the Prophet, I know nothing. Why would I be interested? So what can you, as somebody who is promoting the message of Imam Hussain, what can you say to gain their interest? And so that's the question we asked ourselves. And so to build that link, this is one of the ways that we've come up with. That it's true, in Ahadith, in the Quran, in the Bible, there's references to Imam Hussain. And so if we go to, for example, on this new route, we'll be going past St. Patrick's Cathedral. And so if we're walking past St. Patrick's Cathedral and we tell people about Imam Hussain in the Bible, there's a link. And then we can draw upon that link, and then we can build on that link. And so that's what we're trying to achieve in this case.
Okay, so this is the first side of the flyer that you all will have with you, and this is the message basically that you have to give. So if you see here, the key items we are talking about the main key theme is about the fighting the oppression, right? Zoom it. Zoom it bigger. I don't know, I've been not using actually Apple before, to be honest. Okay. It's readable now? Okay. So as you can see, it says Hussain, inspiration and role model for those who love justice. The story of Hussain inspired millions of freedom and justice seekers across the world. So these are the key messages that you should have when you are introducing Imam Hussain. Sure.
So just pardon us for the interruption for a second. We're just going to rearrange this and make some space. So just bear with us for a second. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
Should we read the pamphlet out? Just reading?
I think better. Okay, just to bring them on board, and then we need to do something
Zen.
Just to bring them on the page, that's why I'm saying.
Yeah.
To keep part-time, we can keep part-time. Detail पढ़ने की जरूरत है.
So as you can read probably yourself as well, what we're going for is Imam Hussain is a symbol of fighting oppression. And so this is probably the second message. First, we're building up a link by associating Imam Hussain and showing them that if you're Christian, Imam Hussain should be known to you because he is mentioned in the Bible. And then once we've got that link established, we can then go on and say, well, okay, now that you understand, this is why he is important today, because his message helps us to fight oppression. Okay? And so he's the inspiration and role model for those who believe, who love justice. The story of Imam Hussain inspires millions of freedom and justice seekers across the world. Today, every Australian can take inspiration from Imam Hussain to fight any type of injustice, extremism, and oppression. And I think that's been a very key message for the past many years, that one of the big elements of the Ashura Procession is to raise that voice against extremism, against injustices, and against oppression. And that's something that is a fundamental message of what we're trying to convey. And it's very poignant because we often get the complaints. How many of us have heard that, you as Muslims don't say enough, you as Muslims don't do enough? My view on that and my response now is very confident, because I can say that I'm part of 10,000 people that march down the street who openly criticize and speak up against extremism. So before we continue on, again, because these sessions have a lot of information provided and a lot of words spoken by myself, so it's good to pause and just ask questions. So if there's any questions that have come up so far, ask away. So we can take a break, maybe 5 minutes to ask questions. Is there anything that's been said which you want clarification on? Everything's pretty transparent and understood? Yep. So this is the reverse side of the pamphlet as well. So with the front expressing Imam Hussein's ability and his message's ability to inspire us to fight against oppression and to fight against injustices and against extremism. And so on the reverse of the flyer, we will give examples of places where today there is oppression, where there is extremism, where there is injustice. And these are all this is current. So if anybody asks, yeah, but you're in Australia, are you being oppressed now? You're on the street right now. Who's oppressing you? The answer is, well, it's not just me. Imam Hussain, his message tells us to... So Imam Hussein's message teaches us to make sure that it's not just about us. We live in a free society. We live in a place where we can express ourselves. But there are people who are equals in humanity to us that are not able to experience those freedoms. And so if we can experience freedom, we have an obligation to speak for them. And so that's where the back of the flyer will come in. And it's a quote, it's a poignant quote from Imam Hussein: "Those who are silent when others are oppressed are guilty of oppression themselves." And so that is the message we need to take, and that is the message that we take forward as well.
Excuse me, brother. For these leaflets with the website, the people when they investigate, sometimes it links them to Islamic things, and I'm not sure how much this covers like about the Islamic main core, because they can get astray again with the different dimensions. You know, kind of they go to more Wahhabis, more Muslim, get confused. Are there on the website like enough information?
Yeah, so we have not. There we go. So we have not actually put in a website. It's a social media thing. To be very frank, I'm not the best at social media stuff. But the idea is that with hashtags, Shoaib, do you want to explain this a little bit? He's here.
Sorry?
So the website that's been linked, so there's no website that's actually provided. It's actually a hashtag on Twitter, and so you can gain more information and get in contact.
Because this drags people to think, and they want to go back to the source. So my suggestion, just get some common good websites, for example, Islam.org or something. Let people more investigate on the better
Let
way.
me answer that. Yeah.
Because even with translations of it's too much deviated.
Yeah.
these days. So
Yes.
everything is deviated. Even on the website, people they will investigate.
Yeah, so you see over here mainly we are putting three things. The third thing is missing over here. One is a Twitter tag. So the hashtag that we want to basically take on that day particularly. So we just want to create a trend of this hashtag. So one of our brothers is basically working around that subject. And then we have an email over here. So if anybody has any question, they can send an email directly to us. And the third thing is a Facebook page. So I think this is not working, but
So it's a big one that works.
I think just hold on for a second.
Another comment.
Just 1 minute. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah. So the third thing is our the Facebook page. So Facebook page, so we are planning that all these things will be constantly published with a certain interval, whatever we are showing you, also as part of the screen. As well, it will be constantly publishing on the Facebook page of Ashura community. So giving the same message, whatever we are conveying on the social media platforms as well. And then we'll be trying to spread it across as well. You have another question you were saying, sorry.
Yeah, the two types of generation they will ask. Some people they are older age,
Right.
they're more famous with religions and politics, and the younger who probably they don't have much information. So I think the young generation more on the social media, the
Right.
older, more maybe websites or more leaflets that shows some are like being too much and being excess with people. Then it is common things. They start from scratch asking things.
Right,
politics
right.
and things.
Right. So that is the reason we are giving you both basically. So the basically your main armor in terms of the normal public is that flyer that we are talking about, right? That's why we showed you that flyer, because flyer will be the first thing that you're going to engage with, that because that is the thing that you will have in your hand. Social media work will be going on across, but definitely you will not be seeing it there physically, right? It's not tangible. So that work we will be doing that on Ashura Day. Julus will be live as well on the Facebook page, on the other areas as well. And I think there are multiple societies that are also contributing to the procession. They will be also putting that procession live everywhere. So I think it will be a good coverage. Last year also we got a very good coverage around the social media as well. So we are covering both, and then for the normal public we are also covering via that flyer basically. So the flyer we are trying to utilize as our summarized message, simple, easy to understand for normal public, right? So we just want to, yeah. Yeah.
what he said. However, like people who want to like who get interest and then they have the enthusiasm to research. How
Right.
do you make sure that they like, go after many sources? Like if you, for example, like if you search Ashura, they have people bleeding, and they'll say like, what kind of religion is this? How do you make sure in your pamphlet that people go after the right source of information, not just like searching general Ashura and finding a lot of propagated things which may divert them from the true message of Imam Hussain? So how do you make sure that does not happen?
Very good question. You want to answer it?
That's an excellent question. So, just if I can restate it, if you tell people about Muharram, if you tell people about Ashura, they Google it, the first thing that comes up is a bunch of people that are bleeding, right? And so the question is, how do you make sure that when somebody looks it up, they don't see that, they see what you're trying to get them to see? That's one of our main considerations in going in with the approach that we've gone. We're trying to channel all the inquiries towards us, okay? So if we've given you the information, follow the Twitter tag, ask for the emails, go to the Facebook page. It's because we're trying to give you the information that can back up what we're providing you, okay? So step one, the flyer. The flyer has specific content that has been designed by us to be distributed to everybody else, okay? That is backed up by the volunteers, okay, who will then explain the flyer in a similar way to everybody else that's sitting here. Then the third level is contact. If they want to contact somebody, if they want a reliable source, they'll go to the person that printed it, who's responsible for it. And when they do that, they're coming to us, and we're giving the same message again. Does that answer it?
You write down on the flyer the word fighting. That's gonna be something messy, you know. You can change
The word
it
fighting?
to, yeah, the word fighting
Can you put the flyer back up?
in a flyer. Can you
Yeah.
change it to like a stand for oppression and injustice?
So the statement was that the word has been used in the flyer. The word is fighting. Can't do it.
The fight of fighting.
Yeah. So what we'll do, so this is, before the session started, I had a quick chat with everybody as well, and I said that we need to be open ourselves to see if we can find a better way of explaining the message. And so let's have a look at the message, see if it's in context. If we can use a better term, fantastic. If we can't, then we need to be able to justify it. So let's go through that exercise.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Stand is better word for that.
To stand,
Stand with oppressions.
stand against oppression.
The fighting
Against?
So anything, I think there's a sister who's got a comment as well.
I think we're gonna need this. Sorry. Can you come a little bit closer, please? Can you come a bit closer?
Some people are offended by this.
Assalamualaikum everyone.
Walaikum
So
salam.
I take the word fighting in every general context. So for example, in every part of the country we read articles about fighting injustice. So for example, this sort of injustice happens. For example, somebody is killed and people come on the road saying, fight for, maybe fight for John, because he was illegally killed or he was painfully killed. So I think justice is the word which calls for action. And that's what you're trying to convey to everyone.
Excellent, thank you. Can you sit here?
So the sister actually has a different opinion. So her opinion is that in this context, when you're trying to do something, it's an action that's required. There's oppression. Somebody's been oppressed. It's common language that, for example, even if John was the name she used, if John has been oppressed, somebody will fight on his behalf. The Aussie battler. So in terms of the Australian language, the colloquialism that is employed here, the term fighting itself in this context is not necessarily a bad thing. And that was our consideration as well in utilizing this word. Because it's a direct word, it's an emotive word, and it's a powerful word. But it doesn't mean that you are the oppressor. You're fighting the oppressor, which means you're the good guy. And so then it's for us, as the people conveying the message, to be on that same level, to be able to be confident in what we're delivering, to then enforce what we're saying. Okay? Are there any other questions or comments at this stage? This is good. This is what the whole point is. This is the experience. Yes, brother.
Assalamualaikum everyone.
Walaikum salam.
I think when it comes to the message of Karbala and Imam Hussain, it's all about the social justice that we're trying to convey to the people. And nowadays we can see from our society and the environment that there's not much awareness about the message of Karbala and Imam Hussain. And social justice can be the term that we can utilize as general to try to convey the message of what it's about, as we can see in our society, in the city of KC, in Melbourne, around the world, in many other societies. The term injustice has been misutilized by so many people, bad people, ISIS and so forth. And if we could just start off by conveying the message of Karbala through social justice and break it down by narrowing it and coming to oppression, I think that would be a good thing for the believers on the day of Ashura. And just out of curiosity, on the day of Ashura, are we expecting any sort of media or journalists to be approaching us and asking questions? And if yes, how are we going to approach them? Second thing is that, as we all know, we are not strangers to the Australian society, and nowadays the atheists, or atheism, is on the verge of rise, as we all know. If some sort of a guy comes and approaches us who doesn't have any knowledge about religion, like he's just fed up with religion and that's why he chose to be an atheist. If sort of an aggressive person comes and approaches us in a violent way, how are we going to tackle that issue or that very moment? Are we going to be supported by other members, or are we handling it in a soft manner?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are 2 points there. One was in relation to how to respond to somebody that's perhaps not from a religious background, somebody who becomes aggressive, somebody that is there for a disruptive purpose. And the first point was in relation to social justice as a term and as a movement and as a cause, that this is the current way to describe things, and this is the current way of bringing awareness in terms of the terminologies. So before I get into responding, just in terms of to make sure things are going on track. So the idea was that we would present you with what material will be given to the volunteers to then go out and disseminate to everybody else, and then to discuss exactly these points, which is why we've got the key steps of what you're trying to do and how you're going to go about doing it. So I think in terms of the material itself, I think that part will close, and now we'll get into this section where we're discussing how to go about speaking about this material. And so in relation to the first point, and the first point we've got there is profiling, who to engage. And so it's very, very good timing that you brought this up. So the idea is to recognize who you're speaking to. I think Shobha just mentioned you'll have all sorts of different people. You have to also recognize in terms of the demographic of where we are in the city, the people change. In previous years, going across Latrobe Street, you're going through shopping districts, you've got Melbourne Central, you've got universities, you've got state libraries, so you're going to have a generally younger sort of a crowd. When I say younger, it's relative to me. So, you're talking about uni students, you're talking about, 30s, that sort of age group. When we're now changing the route to be doing a parliamentary circle, we're now talking about people that are going to be a much older crowd. So we're now talking about people that are professionals, people on holidays, people that are perhaps attending Parliament, people that are engaged in some form of employment. So now we're talking about people that are perhaps in their 30s through to their 50s, through to their 60s. And so it's a different demographic. So we have to understand that in order to understand who to engage. Some people you just give a flyer. If they take it, great. If they don't, it doesn't matter. Some people will take the flyer, and then you have to realize, do I still want to talk to this person or not? Is this person going to present too much of a challenge? Or is this person going to cause conflict? Or is this person going to be somebody that's genuinely interested? And so that's profiling. Shubha, what do you want to add?
Yeah. So basically the key part here in terms of profiling is that you need to understand that who you are engaging with. As I said, that the engaging process start from giving the flyer, as Khurram bhai also mentioned, right? Because that is where you have to engage a person, right? By giving a flyer, and then once he receive it, then immediately you can sense from his reaction, you want to, as a step, want to engage it further, you want to explain him further, or they say, okay, thank you very much. Some of them will not take the flyer even, right? They will say thank you very much. And then you thank them, in a smiley fashion, and then move on. Similarly, the one who takes it, again, as I said, that their next step is that how you engage with them. And depending on the profiling. For example, we mentioned in the last volunteer session as well, that we have felt so far that engaging with what we call, I'm not being racist, but engaging with some kind of from Asian background normally don't give you that much, response. So if you see someone like that, you can again, engage with them by a flyer, but don't engage them further, because eventually you will not get much out of it. Similarly, I've seen, based on my experience here in Australia, especially in Melbourne CBD, if a person is between 45 to 60, a lady or a man, both of them, they are very much interested to know. Somehow they want to know more, and somehow they get very much interested and get into engaged and discussion and all of that. So some of the times we have to spend like 15 minutes to 20 minutes to 30 minutes even to cater, for example, a couple last time, it was me and Wajid bhai, it took almost us 30 minutes to discuss everything from world politics to religion to everything. But it's good, like the more you talk, the more they understand our message, the more they understand Imam Hussain, the more they understand the event of Karbala, the more they understand the relation between that event and the world today. And that is why it is very important that we engage more and discuss more and talk more about it. Okay? Question?
Actually, before we go to that question,
Yeah.
can I just...
Sure.
So before we go to that question, I think I want to just tie things up. So in line with what we were doing last year as well, we're going to do role plays. The idea is to give you some information now, some sort of guidance now, and then we carry it out so that people get a little bit more familiar about it. When you're engaging, just to wrap this point up before we go to a different point, so when you're engaging with people, you have to understand three things. One, what are they asking? Because what they're asking to you verbally is not always a question they really want to know. And so trying to figure that out, if you're able to figure that out quickly, you'll be able to engage with them in a much more powerful position. And whenever you're dealing with people, whenever you're negotiating something, you want to be in that more powerful position, so you control the conversation. The reason why you want to be, so number one, identifying their real question. Number two, controlling the conversation. And number three, having an exit strategy. So being able to remove yourself from a conversation that may not be productive. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an aggressive conversation. It just may not be a productive conversation. So how do you extract yourself from that conversation? So always having a set of words or a set of sentences in your mind that you're able to then just go, okay, this is how I'm going to draw a line. This is how I'm going to exit. So
keep those three things in mind. We'll continue on to the other questions, and then be prepared because we're going to be picking out volunteers to engage in conversation up front. Okay?
I wanted to ask a question about the demographic. You said it's changed. We're going through the parliamentary route, so there will be more people who are, or not necessarily, but as far as I can think, like people who are employed in a professional field. So what kind of language do you interact? Do you use a lot of colloquialism, or do you use high-level sophisticated language? Because language here is given value. So a way you interact with people affects how their interest on it. So which kind of language do you use?
Good question. My recommendation would be the language you're most comfortable with. Okay? So just because you're talking to somebody who is older than you, who may be from a different profession to you, doesn't necessarily mean that you need to change the words that you are using, unless you're confident in doing so. If you're very, very confident at being able to speak to people and with people, then sure, adjust your words and adjust your tones and adjust your language accordingly. But if you're not, then what's most important is having knowledge behind you. So the subject matter you need to be very familiar with. If you're familiar with the subject matter, you can then engage with somebody in any language, and they will try to adjust their tone and their language to you to learn. Okay? So the idea is to get yourself very familiar with the material, understand Imam Hussain, and this is the message that, this is not just for 5, 10 days, 40 days, 50 days. Spend the whole year learning about this stuff. Because the more knowledge you have, just the mere fact that you're sitting here, keep in mind there's, between 10 to 15,000 people that attend this procession, right? And of that 10 to 15,000 people, there's maybe 60, 70 people here. So you're already people that are engaged to do something. You want to contribute. So the best way to contribute is to first gain knowledge yourself. Okay?
There was one more question.
I believe that there is not much time over there, especially in engaging the people, and we are just passing by anyway, and of course we don't have much time though. So I would like to ask you a question that if somebody comes up and asks us just a simple question that what is it about though? So how do you explain that what is it about, and just only the main keys of the topic, to, I would like you to discuss with, please, and to add with your topic as well, the question that you asked, so definitely it's a bit easy one, so I just want to add a little bit more, like, if you know Hindi, so if there is anyone like from Hindustan or from India, so definitely that's I would like to add on it. So definitely the Urdu and Hindi is the same, I would rather feel comfortable to explain them rather in English or than Hindi, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's I would like to please explain the 3 or 4 when please.
Okay, so what would be the ordinary responses to the question? And number 2, I think it's very good advice. So if you see somebody, you speak in that particular language, so you see somebody on the street, they're Indian, they're Pakistani, they're not a part of the procession, you understand or you speak Urdu, speak to them in Urdu. Because you're more confident in that, do that. If you're able to speak German, and you meet somebody from a German background, explain Imam Hussain in German. It's fantastic. The idea is to be confident with the material and the language that you use. Okay? And then as you develop your skills in being able to speak with people, you can then adjust according to them as well. But the foundation of it is being confident in the language that you use, backed up by the material that's in your mind.
Message should remain constant.
The message should, and again, the message is supposed to be consistent throughout. We're not going to be able to achieve that in 1 year. It might take 5 years for us to be able to do that, because you've got so many different thoughts, so many different angles and mentalities. But the idea is that the message itself that we're trying to convey will develop, and we will all develop along with it. And that requires us to be engaged with each other more frequently as well. Okay? The other part, so how do you respond? So that's part of the role plays that we're going to be doing. So when somebody comes up, when we're doing the role plays, they'll ask. So I might be the person that's being pushy, and I might say, well, who's Imam Hussein? Why Imam Hussein? And so the response to that, we're going to go through. Okay, so if you're able to hold off for just a bit more, we're going to do that.
Wait for Hassan bhai, aap kya kare?
No.
Okay. So I think we should now move more into a practical level, that the role plays that we're talking about. Does anybody want to volunteer? We can start with, as we discussed, both of you.
Ali will be the one who's the volunteer.
Okay,
yeah, but
fine.
I want just to say something.
Yeah, please. Please.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, first.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. My name is Zain. Actually from Ashura community with the guys, and like the smallest one with this group, I mean with the efforts and the things that I've been doing with them. So the things that just I want to mention, that we have two messages when we reach people. We have the general one and we have the special specific one for the events. So if you have anyone as one of the brothers, yeah, and he was mentioned that if they have the experience and the knowledge, so you can start with what we call it the general discussion. So if anyone try to lead the discussion to something broad and very wide, so you always go to what we call it to start with what's the meaning of life? There is God or there is no God, then there is message. If you take that path, you will go back to the same point. But if they ask you a specific question about Imam Hussein, then you can know and tell that there is a path and there is a guidance who can guide you through the path, and you can go through Imam Hussein. And there is a lot of details. So whoever try to ask any question, just have these two options in mind, general and special events. That's all. Yeah. So Ali will be like...
yeah. You can, whatever you like. I think he can be the guy that is interacting you. Yes.
Oh boy.
And you are a volunteer. Yeah.
All right.
And we give you. Let's use this as a flyer for the time being. Right.
Okay. Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Ali. I'm part of this event today. It's for Haram Ashura, as you can see on the banners and the flyers. And if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to help you out. Yeah.
So I think you need to first basically engage
Let's switch. What we'll do? So I'm going to be the guy handing out the flyer first, and Ali's going to be the guy that doesn't like me. Okay. So you've got all these people walking down the street. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're just standing there minding your own business, and I'm going to come up and go, "Hi, how are you?"
You're coming to me.
I'm coming to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Would you like to take this and have a look? Would you like to know what we're doing here? What's going on? You seem interested, so I thought I'd come over and ask.
Keep the flyer. I'll just ask you some questions.
You want to ask? Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's this event about?
So this is about Imam Hussein. Do you know who Imam Hussein is?
No.
Do you see?
Imam?
So Imam. So we're Shia Muslim.
Yeah.
Okay. And every year we commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, who is the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad.
Okay.
Okay, and the circumstances around his martyrdom were such that for 1400 years, every single year we come together and we commemorate his martyrdom.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and not only that, but we also use that as a guidance and as a message to then convey something which is important in society today. So if you have a look, do you want to go?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some information that's available on that flyer that'll be able to explain things a little bit better to you as well. And then there's also links and contacts to be able to get in touch with us if you've got any other questions.
Yeah, so just wanted to ask you, how does that affect my life now? Like, what do I get from this?
So today, the message that we're trying to convey is that Imam Hussein was trying to actually empower us to be able to fight against oppression. So we as citizens here in Australia, we're very well off, you know. But then there's others around the world. So if you look at the back of this flyer, you'll notice that, you know, there's cities that are mentioned, and there's actually tribes of people that are mentioned who are extremely oppressed. Okay? And so what we're trying to achieve here is take the message of Imam Hussein, the positive message of Imam Hussein and apply it to ourselves, where we as free people need to speak up for those that are not free to speak up for themselves. Okay?
Yep.
If you've got any more questions for me, I'm happy to help.
So what happened?
You're supposed to not like me, by the way.
What happened? I'm not sure. But finish. Go on. Yeah. So what happened on this day? You're saying that he's.
How was he martyred?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's I hope you've got a couple of minutes because.
Yes, I'm asking. Yeah, I'm interested now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is it's a very it's a protracted event.
Yeah.
It started off in terms of. There's a political background to it as well as a religious background to it.
Yeah.
But the actual event itself that we're commemorating occurred 1400 years ago in what is now known as the city of Karbala. Okay.
Where is this Karbala?
So this is in Iraq.
Okay.
Okay. And so Imam Hussein was actually there with 72 companions, including his 6-month-old child, and they were surrounded by an army. And they were martyred.
Who was the army?
So the army was representing the government of that time, the governor of that time. Okay.
So he wasn't. So he's like Ned Kelly in a sense.
Well, not quite. He wasn't. He wasn't. It's a good question. Yeah. But not quite, because he wasn't in Australia.
Okay.
No, and he didn't wear a big helmet. But but it's very, very different.
I can relate to him as an Australian.
Yeah.
Is it good to make like they are like who are the army, then you make their relationship with ISIS or Al-Qaeda?
You can, but it depends on the person you're speaking to. So
I think it's a good idea to bring in connotations or to bring in adjectives. I mean, keep it simple and keep it.
Yeah.
Keep it
generalization.
Because it depends on your relationship with the person. A person might just be wasting your time. Okay? So the more general you keep it, so there's no need to go into it and say that it was Yazid, because then you're throwing too many words at people. The focus should remain on Imam Hussein and anything that may invoke some form of emotion as a result. Okay? So that's what I'm trying to do. Is that being conveyed at all? Is there any feedback in relation to it?
Yeah, the other thing is actually just a normal question apart from all these which you have just explained to us. Actually, there would be a question that apart from that, if the one whom you get engaged with, so they would rather ask a question that why you guys are beating yourself.
Yeah.
That's just a common question, you know. I'm pretty sure they would ask that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in addition to the general conversation we're having, what if somebody's asking, okay, wow, this looks interesting. There's so many people. Wow, why are you wearing black? Okay. So we'll go through the steps.
Yeah.
So this is what's happened in my experience. Why are you wearing black is the first question.
Yeah.
Ask me.
Why are you wearing black, man? What's happening?
You don't like it?
I like black.
Hang on.
Yeah. You look
it makes me look black. It makes me look slimmer. No, but seriously. So why are you wearing black? This is a question that gets asked not from outsiders but from insiders, from people within our community. Okay? So my response is always, if you go to a funeral, and this is not our culture, we're talking about their culture. When you go to a funeral, what color do you wear?
Black, yeah.
We're here commemorating the martyrdom of somebody who in our religion and in our faith is at the utmost of importance. And we're commemorating their martyrdom, which is why in grief, we are all wearing black. Okay? So that would be my response, the initial response, and then there's obviously, if there's conversation, you elaborate on that response. But then that'd be the initial response. And then you ask, okay, fair enough, you're wearing black, but then what's this all about? You're hitting yourself. Good question. Now, again, it depends on who you're speaking with. If it's, the average guy who's just loud and doesn't really seem like somebody that's going to be engaging in a conversation, you just say, well, this is the way that we express ourselves in our traditional way. It's a traditional expression of grief, okay? And then you leave it, and then, because anything more than that, if somebody's trying to pick a fight, is going to be not worth it, okay? And then that's where you find your exit strategy, and then you go, if you go through the material, and if you have any further questions, you're more than welcome to answer. Have a nice day. Walk off, okay? Because the more people get into it, depending on what their psychology and what they're coming from, it may not be worth engaging with them, okay? But then if somebody seems they're genuinely, they want to know, then you can go into a bit more of a, if you like, a psychological description of what it is. So there's a concept in psychology called somatization, okay? So which means that it's a physical manifestation of grief, okay? So for example, it's very common that you perhaps even in your own families and this is for everybody, not just Muslims, there's some form of grief and somebody will just strike themselves, okay? This is an expansion on that. And so this is something which was actually done. We've actually got flyers on this as well, which explain the concept and the history of Matam, as well as the psychological explanation of how a controlled form of grief, physical manifestation of grief, is achieved, okay? And so that's, depending on who you're speaking with, you would adjust your answer accordingly. And that more technical answer is that it is a manifestation, a physical manifestation of your grief, okay? Another sort of simple way of doing it is, when somebody, tells you a mad joke, right? And you laughing and laughing and laughing, you end up just hitting yourself, right? That's why they're called knee slappers. I'm not sure if anybody knows that term. It's like a colloquial term. It's a knee slapper. He told me a knee slapper. Why? Because you laugh so hard, you slap your knee. Ah, ha, ha, ha. So there's a physical reaction to something which is a psychological condition. Your laughter is a psychological condition. Your grief is a psychological condition. And then you manifest the extreme nature of it physically. And so the Matam that we do is a culturally, over hundreds and hundreds of years, it's been designed to channel that manifestation into a particular form. Okay?
So I don't think so that my question is related to what you said, but I've asked many people this question, but I didn't get the answer that I wanted. So as you said that we hit ourselves, it's not just that how we slap our chest, but some people they take knife and they make babies bleed, they put cut on their head and stuff. Many other Muslims, they asked me this question too, but I didn't have the answer. So I'm asking not just you, everyone here, why are we doing that? Why are we making a baby bleed? Is it a kind of memory or something, or are we just doing it for trying to show that how we are mourning?
He's telling us.
Sister, that is a very, very loaded question. Okay. The reason for that, and I think the best way that I would respond to it, is in the context of what we're achieving here. Okay. So it does go off track a little bit. So I'm going to answer it in a similar fashion. Okay. For a detailed response, more than welcome to discuss this at post event. But for an immediate response, let's say for example the scenario is this: you're discussing with somebody, pull out their phone. Okay, Ashura. How do you spell Ashura? Ashura. Okay. And the first picture you see is a guy with a knife over his baby, cutting them. What is this? Uh-oh. So my response to that would be, okay, so being a cultural manifestation of what we're doing, as you see here, you will not see anybody with their shirt off. You will not see anybody with any kind of materials that they're striking themselves with. You will not see anybody that's engaging in any of this action. So I'll limit myself to what you're actually witnessing here. This is, as I said, a controlled form of expressing grief, which has been culturally developed. What that is something which has also developed as part of culture in certain parts of the world, but it's not something which is practiced here. Okay? So if somebody from outside asked that question to me, that's how I would respond. Okay? But what you're asking is why does that happen, right? So that is something that is perhaps, this is not perhaps the best forum to discuss that, because there's a lot of things that are involved. There's different marja that have varying degrees of edicts on this matter. There's people that don't follow marja, okay? And they have their own way of dealing with things. So as far as why it happens, that's a very, very deep question. And it's not so much deep, but it's an involved question to respond to. So if it's okay with you, we can discuss that at a later point. Is that okay? But as far as if this question is raised at the procession by somebody else, the response that I gave, does that seem like a reasonable response? Halfway there. Okay, we'll try to get the whole way there.
I have a question for you. If they ask us, well, what went so wrong in Islam for not even 50 years after the death of your Prophet, the Muslims killed his grandson and all of his children, what's our response then?
Are you, if you're happy for me to keep going, I'm happy to go, but you know, Shofai's here as well, and he's actually more qualified for this stuff than me. So, but again, very good question, and this is again at the procession. This type of question would only turn up if you've been engaged with somebody for about 10-15 minutes and that person really knows their stuff.
No, well, you already explained to him who is Hossaini.
Yep.
And he already asked you who killed him.
Yep.
And you told him that
the government.
The government. Who is the government? Well, it's the army of the Khalifa. Who is
Yep.
the Khalifa? He's the cousin of our Prophet as well.
Yep. So again, that's
why did they kill him?
So that would be a question that comes up probably after about 10 minutes of conversation.
Yeah, well, it will come up.
Well, I haven't had that question yet, but it may come up.
We actually had it. You had it? We had this question.
How did you respond to it at that time?
It wasn't good enough.
Okay. Fair enough. So again, this requires you to go into a bit of detail, okay, and it really expands the conversation. So you've got two options. If you're confident in answering the question, get engaged. If you're not confident, you need to be able to either find one of the other senior people, find Shoaib Bhai, find Hassan Bilgrami, find a couple of the other senior guys that'll be there as part of the team leaders.
You can say it's politics at the time and start from the day when...
No, but if you're not confident in it yourself, and this is what I was saying at the very start, if you as a volunteer are not confident in responding to something because you may not necessarily have the full amount of knowledge behind you, don't answer it. Find somebody that can answer it, or just say, it's like when you're at work or if you're at uni. Somebody asks you a question, you don't know the answer. It's okay. You're not expected to know everything. Okay? So you can cut and run. But what I would respond, if that's so, my response would be that this is so the question would come up. So hang on. So wasn't he Muslim as well? The guy that sent the army to kill Imam Hussein? It's like, yeah, he was. So why is there this infighting? Is this like an uprising? Is this something? Well, kind of is, because Imam Hussein was there to stand up for all of these ideals that we've just explained to you. And the government of that time was an oppressive government. And because it was oppressive, and because it was engaged in actions that are not Islamic, Imam Hussein took a stand. And he refused to rubber stamp, if you want to use that term, the existing government, because they needed Imam Hussein's support. And because he refused to give them validation to continue misusing the name of Islam, he became an enemy of the state. And this is why the government, the state, sent its army to fight Imam Hussein. And then obviously from that point onwards, if they want to discuss it in more detail, then depending on, again, how deep you want to go into it, you can. But as a very sort of high level response, generalized response, that's what I'd be giving. Would that be okay? I think there was one...
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm part of Ashura committee, and
Your name?
Muhammad Ali, Nasir Ali. Yes, sister has got a question, and I think Khuramba, you have answered it. That yes, it's part of culture. But yes, the reason, and maybe I think the reason that she's half satisfied, actually, you can tell them that okay, it's there culturally, but you can know about any religion from their school of thoughts, from their books, and all our.
No, it's fine. Go. It's working.
It's working.
No. There you go. Don't move it too much. Down.
Okay. So yes, we can say it's written in our school of thoughts, and a part of, and also you can check that in our books that it is not allowed by the religious scholars. So using marja name, they will say, oh, who is this marja? But yes, you can say a high level of religious scholars does not allow this, and it happens in some sort of cultural worlds. So it is forbidden, you can tell them. And that's why we are not doing it here. So that's one of the questions. And second question was about this brother, that some people can, sorry, my English is not that good, but I'll try to deliver it. That some people can tell you that, okay, what Yazid has done, he is a Muslim as well. So the best thing which differentiate Imam Hussein, and yes, that thing will differentiate, yes, that you can tell him that, yes, he was from Islam as well, but because he was tyrant, he was delivering injustice to the people, like these couple of words, or that's why Imam Hussein rose his voice, stood firm against him, even he was alone with his family, but he stood for justice. So that will give them a very good impact. That's my personal views. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. It's fine.
Just want to add to what Nasir Bhai said. Just want to add one thing, one simple sentence can answer that question. Is that what Imam Hussain said when he left Medina? He said, what he said, the famous saying, I am leaving for reforming the nation of my grandfather. Why? Because the reform is required, because the injustice and tyranny was there. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Spoken too much.
I think yes. Yep. So that is the saying that can simply justify this whole thing, because he saw that the injustice is there and the reformation is required. So he stood up for the formation of the nation of his grandfather. Now I need two volunteers from you to do our role play over here. Who would like to come? Would you like to come? Yeah. Come and you ask the question. Please come.
So while you're here, introduce yourself as well, please. Introduce yourself as well, please. Your name and. We're trying to work it through.
You are the one who is the flyer. You are the volunteer, and you are the office guy that you were talking about, the one who don't do
Okay, but introduce your name and everybody tell me.
Yes.
Yes.
Everyone, my name is Salman. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ali. Hi, how are you today? Very good, yourself? I'm good, thank you. Yeah. Would you like to have this flyer just about what we are doing today?
Sure.
Thank
Would
you.
you like to explain what it's about?
Yeah, we're just taking out a procession. We are trying to pass on a message against injustice, against social injustice mostly, and about what's going on generally all over in the world at the moment. And just trying to familiarize everybody that it's your right. It's a very good way of life to be informed and to stand against what's not right in the society. That's what it's all about.
That all sound awesome, but I would like to know one thing: what the event of Karbala, which you guys are processing about, is about, and why did Imam Hussein had to give his life in order to achieve something?
Yeah, sure. So that's a very, very relevant question, and it's all about reforming the society, basically. That's what he did, and that's what we are trying to remember every year, and that's what the message is about.
Okay,
reforming the society.
Just about Islamic, you might not know, I'm basically an atheist. So
That's
my
fine,
my
that's
notion of God on any religion doesn't exist at the moment, and
Not a problem.
which may be fair enough, because when I see Islam through so many perspectives around the world, it is racially and culturally divided into so many sects. So let's say I might have researched. That's why I am an atheist at the moment. Islam is actually divided into two subcategories, Shia and Sunni. And then even in Shias, there are many other categories as well. So that you might find there are 6 imams, 6 imam believers, and so forth and so on. And even with the Sunnis, there's Hanbali, Maliki, Shafi, and there's one more, I forgot the name. So if Islam stands for only one message to stand against oppression, and it's kind of delivering one message, why is it divided into so many racially divided groups?
Yeah,
even into sectarianism. We are all here against sectarianism and
right.
raising our voice against social justice.
Absolutely. So we are trying to pass on a very simple message, and what you have asked is a very detailed and a deep question, and I understand your passion and
now
your
don't
knowledge.
get me wrong, I'm not here to trying to waste your time,
Yeah,
but
that's
I'm
fine.
rather here to gain more information.
Absolutely. So yeah, what I would suggest is since you know a lot about the background and the history, what happened in the past actually, I would suggest you refer to the flyer that I've just given to you. There are links to it. Pass on your question to our senior team. They would love to answer your questions. And yeah, you've got very good and very relevant questions, and please do ask them these questions.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for your time. I'll make sure.
Not a
to
problem.
pass on the
Enjoy the
message.
rest of your day.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate
See
it.
you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's excellent. Okay.
Sorry, just like
Yeah. So just in response to that guy, whenever someone comes and approaches you asking about the battle in Karbala between Imam Hussein and Yazid, you can actually engage into an interaction with people by gaining their interest in sort of a persuasive language, which we call rhetorical questions. So you might link it with politics, which is going on in this world. So you can link it with dictatorship in some of the countries around the world. Let's say North Korea, how the people are getting oppressed there, and if a person raises his voice against the government, they get penalized. So in a similar way, you can actually engage their interest by linking the event of Karbala itself. So Hussein was against the oppression that was basically going on at the moment in the Karbala, and Yazid was the person who was basically the oppressor. And in a similar way, if you link it with politics of the real world of this 21st century questions, you might be able to answer the question in a better way.
Very good advice. A couple of feedback. So this is one more thing. You're going to have to come up here and speak in front of everybody, okay? Everybody, you know, I'm going to be picking random people if you don't volunteer. Now, this is important because you'll be in front of probably 10,000 people that are marching, plus maybe some few hundreds of people or 1,000 people that are not marching, okay? And you're presenting to them, and you're in a position of responsibility. So you need to have that confidence. So you need to be able to be confident here so that you can be confident there, okay? And so a part of that is also critique, okay? So you'll get some feedback, take it on board, and utilize it. Don't be discouraged by it if it's negative, and be encouraged by it if it's positive, okay? So one positive bit of feedback from Brother Ali, the way that you disengaged, okay? So you knew that this is something which may not necessarily be a fulfilled conversation. It may not be a purposeful conversation, so I'm going to disengage. So being able to recognize when to disengage, very important, okay? And so that is something which is applaudable. Obviously, in terms of the dynamics of that conversation, there was
a very strong level of questioning, and in response to that, it was perhaps it's perhaps not expected or anticipated. So being able to, now this is something that everybody needs to learn, when you go into a conversation, expect a very strong conversation. Somebody with knowledge should be engaging you, and that way when somebody with less knowledge engages you, it's probably a little bit easier and less confronting. Okay? There's a question online.
So we've got some viewers online as well. We are live on Facebook, so so many people are watching. There's a question that says, if you could please advise where in Bible is mentioned about Imam Hussain to volunteers that will help them to break the ice to start the conversation.
Certainly, it was Jeremiah 43.
46:10.
46:10. So Jeremiah, book of Jeremiah in the Old Testament, 46:10. Okay? Did you have a question as well? You raised your hand before.
Oh, yeah, I just, in regard to that conversation where the person was presenting himself and saying, I'm an atheist, I think a good way to create empathy in that situation is if the first thing you say is, I understand a lot of atheists are motivated to be atheists by seeing religious people oppress people, right? And you can say then, that is exactly why we're here, because we saw somebody oppress people in the name of our religion, or
Excellent.
claiming to represent our religion as a colour.
Yeah. Excellent. Salam. It's a very, very good point. Just again, if I may restate that point. So if somebody comes up to you and says that I'm an atheist, and that's their background. So as soon as somebody says something like that, you know that in terms of their psychological position, they're drawing a line. So to break through that line, this is a very good point. So most people, so this is the response, most people who become atheists do so because of the behavior of religious people. Okay? And that's a very important point, because Yazid was the Khalifa of that time, right? And his behavior as a religious person was oppressive. And so Imam Hussain is on the same side as this atheist person in terms of their perception of what is right or wrong. And so to engage with that person, you can now use that person's ideology and reflect it back to Imam Hussain and say that because of that same reason, Imam Hussain stood out against this oppressive religious person. Okay, excellent point.
So just to answer a little bit more about the question in the Bible. So we talked about Jeremiah 46:10, which mentions the event of Karbala. Then we have the book of Revelation, chapter 12, verse 1 to 8, which basically defines the whole event from, to a certain extent, in a very coded word, mention about Hazrat Fatima and all what happened from the oppression after the death of the Prophet till Karbala, but in a very coded fashion. You cannot be able to, until you don't go through it, you can't be able to explain it. So the most explicit one is, as I said, the Jeremiah book, chapter 46 and verse 10. That is very explicit. You can easily relate to it. Then there is another debatable one, which is in Luke. I don't remember the chapter, but they have basically, what they have done is they have distorted the name of Hussein. Actually, the word Hussein is mentioned in the original script, but they have changed it to another word in Aramaic, which is more into Satan, actually. So that's why I'm saying that it's very, very distorted, but if you put the word Hussein over there, it makes more sense than the distorted one. But again, that is disputable, so people can have argument on that. So that's why we mentioned that the most specific one mentioned is the Jeremiah 46:10. Just to detail.
Okay. So in keeping with...
Any more question you have?
Online questions? Okay. And then behind you as well.
Hello everyone. What if you get the media asks you that sort of questions and you don't have that much knowledge to answer them?
Media?
Yeah, like a media stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to ask that other question as well? And then, is there an online question?
Yeah, like we might come across some confronting questions. People generally ask some questions, common questions. that why do you people come on streets like on the weekdays, the working days? It is interrupting the traffic and it is interrupting the working people. You are blocking the roads, the footpaths, and it's creating like a mess in the city. So why don't you arrange it in some weekends where there is not much working people? And that's one of the confronting questions we come across time and again.
Sure. Okay, so two questions, and actually the one in relation to the media, that was raised earlier as well. I think I can't remember, that was you as well. So there will be media that's in attendance. The whole procession will actually, so this is, there's a combination of two different types of media that I'm referring to. There's Western media and then there's our own Eastern media. So as far as the Eastern side is concerned, the whole procession is going to be broadcast live on, what was the, I forget the channel's name at the moment, sorry, I apologize. But it'll be broadcast live throughout. And then, yes, we always invite the Western media to attend as well. We've been on the news on a number of occasions, and there's been articles and things like that as well. What we've always tried to do is channel all media communications through us, okay? So that there's people who are, answerable. So that if we give a response, it's coming from an organizational perspective. And so if a member of if a participant in the procession is asked a question by the general media, our request is that you try to not necessarily answer, but try to guide them to somebody who's a volunteer who's been, trained specifically to deal with the media. Because again, it's a very passionate day, and if you give a response out of passion, it may not be taken the right way, and it can be doctored and so on. So if you give somebody who specifically, so for example, there's brother Sadiq Hamidi, who's from this side of town as well. He's been dealing with media for a long time. My sister deals with the media as well. There's a few other people I've spoken with the media previously too. So we have people that are arranged to be able to do that. And if participants and even volunteers sort of guide the media towards them, I think you'll end up with a better response. Okay. The second question in terms of why on a city day and why everything. Well, every protest that is held in the city is held to cause a disruption. I think it was 2 days ago, on Friday, there's a footy match between Geelong and somebody else. I can't remember who it was. Geelong Collingwood. And so there's a particular group of, I think they're pro-vegan protesters or animal rights protesters, or I can't remember the exact type it was, but I remember reading the article. They basically set up a protest, and they threatened a protest in the city to blockade the final from happening. And they did not cooperate with Victoria Police. They did not cooperate with the City of Melbourne. They wanted to cause maximum disruption, which is why in the end Victoria Police had something like 80 different resources deployed. They had horse-mounted police officers. They had all sorts of resources that were just spread out all over the city to prevent such a disruption from happening. And so you've got people like that who are engaging in these types of behaviors. Whereas what we're trying to achieve is provide a positive message to people and to gain maximum attention to a positive message. Okay? And we do that in full cooperation with Victoria Police. While obviously we do apologize, and every year in at least when I'm speaking, I do offer apologies to people that have been inconvenienced by whether they're in the traffic or whether they're not able to cross a road, and then we have to help them do it, or if they're in a tram or whatever else. There is and it's on the screen as well. So whenever the screen is proceeding, we're obviously apologizing for any inconvenience that's caused. But we believe that this message is very important. Okay? And in previous years, when somebody's gone to a very sort of elevated level of discussion about this with me, I've told them, well, it's the same people as yourself who claim that Muslims never condemn extremism. And here we are, 10,000 of us. You hear that guy at the front? He's yelling against extremism, and yet you're telling us not to. So there's different ways of approaching that as well.
Does that answer?
Yeah. Do you want to do a role play because
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Yeah. So what I want to actually do. So we get distracted, but I think it's good. We work these things through, and it is a long session, and we appreciate that. But I think it works well. What I was saying earlier about being confident in being able to speak with people, and being confident right now, applies probably twice as much, if not 10 times as much, to the sisters. Because in our culture, there's segregation, okay? And so our sisters will actually be on the road talking to people too. And so if we, as a community, cannot give them the confidence to be able to do so, then that's a shame on us, okay? So in light of that, what I'd be suggesting now is if some of the sisters would like to volunteer to actually do a role play as well, that'd be very much appreciated. And then if I don't get volunteers, we may be picking people. Come up, sister. Might be easier if you volunteer. Gia? Gia? Come. I think sister first. I think it might be a little bit easier. You will be. Come. So again, sisters, if you could please introduce yourself, and then we'll do. So we'll limit to 2 questions.
Mention that after this one, you move into marshalling because few people want.
Yeah. So we're going to have 2 questions in this scenario. If we've got time, we'll swap the scenario around. So the person asking the questions will be swapped over. And then immediately after that, we'll do the marshalling session quickly. And then we'll proceed again. So please introduce yourself and then proceed. Your name?
Yeah, so I'm Sanuba.
And I'm Nita.
Okay. So
And can I be the asking person?
you want to be asking questions?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're going to be responding. Okay?
Yep.
So you're going to be the person giving the flyer out, so you need to introduce yourself to her.
Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Should we? So if you come over here, please. Yep, perfect. And here's your flyer. You get a blue flyer. Give the sister the flyer and introduce yourself. Okay.
So,
That's okay.
so hello. Do you want to have this flyer and know what are we doing right now?
Sorry, just a question. Is it okay if I just like be mean to her, or do I always have to be?
Not too mean, but you get 2 questions. Okay?
I'm okay.
Oh
I don't know.
Okay.
So, do you want to look at the flyers and know what are we doing?
Not actually, because I'm actually going somewhere, so I have.
Yeah. That's all right. I'll hold it.
Okay, so not really, because I'm going somewhere right now. Is there something you can like quickly tell me? Because I really need to go.
I don't think so. My response is a good one, but I'll try. So I'll just quickly tell you that what are we doing right now. It's about our Prophet, the one who saved Islam, according to me, what I believe. So Prophet Muhammad is the one that keeps Islam alive till today. His sacrifice is the reason why we Shia Muslims are protesting today, and we're on his side. So that's what are we doing at the moment.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, go for it.
Alright, so like the way you responded to me wasn't like helpful enough because I said like in short words, we quite like to get along. But is there something you can add into the conversation which will actually make me get interested to what you're saying?
I don't think so.
No? Not confident to do that? That's okay. That's all right. Okay. Do you want to add something else? No?
No.
Okay. So there were 2 questions. That's okay. Thank you. You can sit. Thank you. So the sisters engaged in a conversation. Like I said before, when the brothers were discussing it, this is about trying to build confidence. So there will be positives, there will be negatives. If there's a negative, learn from it and be encouraged that you're being supported by everybody here. If there's a positive, take that on board and just develop it even further. Okay? So as far as positives, we have obviously people, so the sister that was asking the questions, she seems to be aware of the negative questions that people may have, the negative attitude that people may have. This is a great positive, because then you can utilize that when you're approaching people. So now you've heard. So somebody may not have time. They just want quick answers. Give me a quick answer. Explain to me quickly. I'm busy. I want to know, but just tell me quickly. And so a response to that may be, sure. A quick response is, so you've got the pamphlet. If you want more details, you can find out later. For right now, we're here as Shia Muslims speaking out against oppression, against tyranny, and against extremism. If you want to know more, you've got that. You can always ask me again. Have a nice day. Simple. Okay? Remember, it's a conversation. You're not there trying to sell something. It's a conversation. Okay? If you don't know, if you don't have an answer, so what do I say? She's asked me a technical question. What do I say? Don't panic. Be like, that's a really good question. You might have heard that me say that 2 or 3 times now. That's a really good question. That's a deep question. This is just something that gives you time to think about a response. Okay? That's a really good question. You know what? You're short on time, so I may not be able to explain it to you in time because it is a good question. So if you refer to the contacts that are provided, they may be able to help you more. If you've got a little bit more time, I'm happy to explain it to you. If they turn around and say, yeah, sure, okay, explain it to me, try your best. Or if you're still not confident, just say, look, I think it's probably better if I grab sister so-and-so, or brother so-and-so, or Shoaib, or somebody, okay? They'll be able to explain it to you in a better way than what I can. And it's okay to not know. Yeah, and there's also, that's right, it's a very good point, thank you. There's also an information table set up at Treasury Gardens, and this year, because we're going from Treasury Gardens to Treasury Gardens, it'll be permanently there. And so people who've got really detailed questions that you may not have a response for, guide them to Treasury Gardens. Great point. What we're going to do is take a pause from the tableegh side. We're going to run through the marshalling stuff quickly because I'm conscious that there's people that are here for the marshalling stuff specifically. And the marshalling is pretty self-explanatory to a great extent. So marshalling is about the crowd control aspect, okay? Making sure our procession is formed correctly, is walking on the streets safely, and is reaching our destination safely, okay? Marshals need to be aware of who's inside the procession, what is going on inside the procession, to provide instruction to the people inside the procession, and to be also aware of what's going on outside the procession. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about the reasoning why we've had changes to the route as well. So as you know, last 7 years, the Ashura Procession has been from Carlton Gardens to Flagstaff Gardens. You may also know that the City of Melbourne is undergoing some extreme renovations. There's the metro tunnel, there's sewer works, there's engineering works, there's road works, there's all kinds of works. And with that comes a lot of traffic. So this is all construction traffic, this is trucks, this is trade-based traffic on top of the existing city traffic. And that concept and that process combined with the recent sort of the recent incursions that have happened in the city where you've got people that are driving into people on purpose, that has created a massive safety concern. And so where you've got so much construction, roadworks, roadblocks, traffic, and you're marching down the street, it adds to the risk, okay? And in terms of minimizing that risk, we have to seek an alternative, okay? And in finding that alternative, we find that this route will be able to accommodate our crowd. It'll also provide the exposure we seek, and it would provide a significant amount of safety because you've got less intersections that you need to cross, okay? And so these are all things that the marshals need to be aware of, okay? So we're causing less disruption, getting the same amount of benefit, and securing ourselves as well as the general public. So overall, it's an optimized route. So when you're looking outside of the procession as a marshal, you need to be aware of people that may be aggressive. So if there's an aggressive person, how do you respond to that? So the marshals are there. So I'm going to let go of this. So think about it in 3 stages. Okay, there's the interior and the exterior. Interior is our people, then the marshals, then the private security, and then Victoria Police, and then it's everybody else. So if somebody is aggressive from the outside, I suck at drawing. I'm horrible at drawing, so I will not even try. So if there's somebody from the outside, they will, and you feel that they're aggressive, they may be a threat. As a volunteer, as a marshal, talk to somebody who is an in-charge person. So there'll be about 10 people that are walking around throughout the whole procession that are in charge of specific sections within the procession. So they'll be the people wearing the sashes. Explain to them, this is an issue, what's happening here, okay? Or there's an intersection, there's a car, what do we do? There's people trying to cross, what do we do? That person will be able to provide you with most instructions. If they can't provide you with instructions, or it needs to be escalated further, they will then go to Victoria Police, or come to me, or come to Sayyid Varis, okay? So that's the chain that we need to follow as marshals, okay? And at the end of it all, you are the guides. Okay, you are the people that will be guiding everybody from start to finish. There will be a slight difference this occasion, so there will be a pause, and I use that word specifically and intentionally. It's a pause, it's not a stop, outside of Parliament. Okay, so we will have about 5 to 10 minutes outside of Parliament where you will have the keynotes delivered. Okay, and so that crowd control function becomes even more sort of important at that point, because to stop a procession of 10,000 people and then to get it started again is not an easy task, okay? Which is why we've got such a drive to have maximum numbers, okay? Is there any specific question about the marshalling?
Last year was my first year in London, and I observed 2 simple things, which upsetted me to an extent. When the lights are green, we still moving on, and everybody was like looking at us. What are we doing? They need to cross the roads. The cars were there, and we were still moving on. So can we add that or sensitize the marshals for that one, so we can manage the traffic in that sense?
So in terms of the traffic management side of things, what we have to understand is, does anybody have a boating license, a license to drive a boat?
Yes, I have.
Yes? But you never bothered with a... So, on the sea, the bigger object always has right of way. Okay? So, when you've got 10,000 people... There's a simple reason for it. If you've got a giant oil tanker, and it's going in a particular way, physics tells you about inertia. And it's very hard for that big object to turn, or to stop. Whereas a small object can just go, whatever it wants to do. So if there's a car and it's stopped and there's a 10,000 people person march happening, it's very hard for the march to do something safely as compared to the vehicle. So as far as Victoria Police is concerned, as far as the council is concerned, as far as all the stakeholders are concerned, the march has right of way, which is why when the traffic light is green, we have right of way and we keep going. Look, if it turns out that for some reason there's an unexpected delay, that we have paused, we have created gaps, let vehicles through, and that's something that we can manage. But that is a safety risk. It's much safer if we have right of way and we keep going, and so that's the way we will proceed. Okay? Any other questions about the marshalling side of things? Who? Yep.
Do marshals have some sort of an identity marker?
So all marshals are wearing vests. We actually, I won't use the word encourage, but the organizations that the marshals are coming from provide them vests with their own logos and insignias. Okay? So for example, Hossaini Society marshals will have Hossaini Society vests. A couple of reasons for that. One, it's to not necessarily promote their organization for any reason, but you are there volunteering for Imam Hussein. Okay? That's the concept that I have. And so, I suppose, taking a step back, when we're there at the procession as 10,000 people or as 200 marshals and volunteers, we're not there as members of particular organizations representing that organizations. We're there as people who love Imam Hussein, and that is it. Okay? One thing that I often say when I get into some sort of an argument with people that are seeking to promote and advertise their organizations, so you realize Ashura Committee organizes this procession. There's 10,000 people here. There's hundreds of banners. Can you show me one banner which says organized by Ashura Committee, which is at the front? Tell me one banner. Or any banner that says my name on it. You won't. You won't see the logo. You won't even see the logo. So this is not about promoting something. This is the only thing that gets promoted on this day and in this event is Imam Hussein. Okay? And so there's people that may not be, on the same terms as you. You may not be on good terms with them in private lives, in different communities, in different associations. There's conflict. All those conflicts need to be left where they are when you're there in the city. Okay? So this is the primary motivation that everybody needs to have. Beyond that, when we're there representing different organizations as marshals, I think it's something which is a merit. Okay? So your organization is sending its volunteers, like in the old days where people would go to help or to join a fight, they would bring their banner. And so you're bringing your banner with you. And so I would see the vest with the Hossaini Society or with Panjshir Society or with Al-Qaim or with whatever. Your banner is that vest. And so that's why we promote that, and so it's fine. So people with vests, and then the organizing committee, you will have people wearing the sashes. Okay? Yep.
Sisters, just ask your questions all at once, so around stand.
The same question as you answered.
Thank you. This is behind you as well. Too much?
We're the volunteers. What do we do there?
Okay. So I heard that as members of our own community don't listen to us while we're volunteers, so what do we do there? Okay. So it goes back to what I was saying just a little bit ago. We're there not as specific communities representing people. We're there to represent Imam Hussein. So if you're a volunteer, do not approach it as you're a volunteer from Hossaini Society, for example. You're there as a volunteer for Ashura Committee or for Imam Hussein. Okay? So depending on what works, if the people in your community respond more to you being a volunteer of Ashura Committee, use that. Okay? And that's the whole point. And so when we've been going around to different communities this year trying to explain to them, become a volunteer. We need volunteers. This is your event. This is not something which promotes us or promotes a particular organization. That's not the point. This is about Imam Hussein. Volunteer for Imam Hussein. And so if you're there volunteering for Imam Hussein, everybody that's not volunteering, they should listen. They must listen. They must follow your instructions. So feel empowered by being a volunteer for Imam Hussein. Okay? What we're going to do this year, so with that particular question, there's sensitivities around it coming from within the sisters and the ladies section of the procession, because traditionally, for the last 18 occasions that the procession has been held, we haven't had that same degree of management within the ladies section that we've had within the gents. We're now in a position where the gents section has been pretty much bedded down, so to speak. So now we need to empower our sisters to be able to manage the ladies section as well. Traditionally, simply for no other association than because she's my sister and she's capable, Vaji has been taking charge. Do you want to stand up for the girls? So you may have seen her at the procession wearing a sash as well. You definitely would have seen her at the procession wearing a sash. But so she's been our point person. And then stand up. You would have all seen this man at the front waving his arms around. And so he's been the guy that, the Zain, who's been sort of marshalling the ladies and trying to get the coordination happening. So these are the two key people and the two key persons at this stage who have been working to sort of organize and marshal the ladies. If we can get more ladies volunteers to then work with these people and to coordinate with them, even on the day if somebody comes up and says, I want to volunteer, I want to do something, start them off as marshals, okay? Get them in touch with either Zain, with Majiha, or whoever is going to be working with these people, with these guys, to then build on that marshalling, okay? And then over time, what we hope to do and what we plan to do is to better arrange the ladies' dasta so that it's as organized or better organized than the gents. Actually, does that answer your question, sister?
So what's the organization of the procession? So is it like gents before ladies or ladies before gents?
Okay, so that's a good question, and I think this may be something which gets answered to a lot of concerns. The procession is organized with the men in front and the ladies at the back. Okay, there's tons of questions over the years from people. Why are the ladies at the back? You oppress the ladies. You oppress the women. Not necessarily the case, because we did try two other options over the course of the 18 processions. We've tried to have the ladies at the front, and the ladies didn't want to do it at that time, and it caused a massive, it caused about a 15-minute, 20-minute delay for us to get onto the road, because the ladies did not want to be at the front. And so it becomes a conflict where some ladies want to be at the front, but majority don't. Okay? Then we tried to have the ladies in between the procession as well, so that you got gents, ladies, gents. That caused other logistical issues, where ladies, again, traditionally, are accompanied with children and prams, which travel significantly slower than the average person, even though that average person is just standing there doing latum and then moving on. That causes logistical issues. That causes the procession to be unnecessarily delayed. We're not there to cause a disruption, we're there to actually march through continuously. And so for that reason, the most effective logistical way of traversing a road, and therefore the safest way of traversing that road, is to have the gents at the front, so that if we need to get the procession moving faster, we can do so, and the ladies at the back, where if there is some sort of a danger and we need to vacate the road or to go to some sort of safety, there's volunteers and marshals there that'll be able to take them straight across to the side. Okay? And so that's probably, that is the reason why we've continued to do so. So it's got nothing to do with us being oppressive to women and women's rights. Okay? Yeah. So this is, again, as I suppose a concluding point from my side with regard to the marshalling. The starting point will be Treasury Gardens. You've got Wellington Parade here. We've elected not to go onto Wellington Parade because it's only about 500 meters, 400 meters of road, and then we have to turn. So there's no real point us taking up unnecessary road space. So we're going to come from Treasury Gardens. We'll do the Amal, we'll do prayers, we'll start off with the speeches, and then the procession will enter the road from Lansdowne Street. It'll go up to Albert Street, turn left. Right here is where you have St. Patrick's Cathedral. So brothers are liaising with St. Patrick's Cathedral to arrange some form of cooperation, some form of discussion and participation. Hopefully that happens, and that'll be fantastic. Then beyond that, we're going to go to, so it's Nicholson Street, and we'll turn left into Nicholson Street, which then turns into Spring Street, and we traverse the length of Spring Street. Along the way, around about here, is where you've got Parliament, and that's where we will have the keynotes delivered. We will also be trying, it's not yet confirmed, it'll be confirmed on the day, there's actually a path that runs through Parliament, right there. And so we're trying to perhaps get permission to occupy that part as well, and so that way we can have a speech delivered on parliamentary grounds, from the steps of Parliament and on parliamentary grounds as well. So that's the intention, and then the procession after the speech will continue on to Treasury Gardens, and then and we'll conclude the program at Treasury Gardens again. Okay? I think the sister had another question. It'll all be traffic managed. So there's traffic management contractors in place. They'll do it. So at this time, the only intersection that you get is one here, and then this main intersection here, and then you'll have Burke Street and Collins Street.
We are other side of the train. So
Yeah.
we're not getting intersections.
Did you have a question before? A certain age to be a marshal? There's no legislative requirements, there's no regulatory requirements, but it's very important that if you are under 18, you have permission from your parents because you are doing something which is a physical exercise, okay? And obviously it's just a bit of common sense. So you may be young, but you're not young in mind. You know, you're mature enough to be able to participate in this. We encourage volunteering at all ages. Okay, it's very important. But where you fit in as a volunteer depends on your maturity as well. Okay, if you feel that you are mature enough to be a volunteer and a marshal, great. If you're under 18, get permission from your parents.
There's a question from sisters. There are some people who normally ask about ISIS, that we wear the same color as them and they call themselves Muslims as well, and also they have something written on their flag as our alam. So what is the difference between them and us?
Very simply, the difference is that we are there speaking out against them. For the past however many years, all you have to do is look at our the screen that's running at the front, our flyers, speak to our volunteers, or just put an ear out at the front of the procession. You'll hear a very loud young Lebanese guy screaming out stuff against ISIS.
Do we have a prominent play card?
We have a, what is it? It's about a 3-meter screen, which is driving at the front of the procession, which displays. So, but on a very specific note, this is a key concern. So we used to get a couple of questions, and I just want to address this point now, because again, these are all things that need to be clarified and taken seriously, and I do. So this comes back to your own confidence in what you're doing. We explained earlier, I think we had a quick session here about the black. The first question somebody asked, why are you all wearing black? We're wearing black because we're mourning. You know, this is not just our culture, this is a universal language. Black represents some form of mourning, some sort of something sad. And so that's why we're wearing black, not because we're ISIS. Okay? And the second thing, so this is again in terms of knowledge. One of the things, so this is, you know, in your daily lives, not necessarily at the procession, but in your daily lives. Even recently when we were having a discussion with Victoria Police, I happened to just say that you do realize that despite the 10 years of war that has taken place in Iraq and in Syria and everything else, we've got all these Western powers that are fighting ISIS. It took one man to give an edict. Okay? And the following day, there were 1 million people that joined the local military, so the Iraqi army. And that is the point. So you go through history, all you want. You go through media reports, go through all of them. If you can, I challenge anybody, you tell me a different point in history to this which changed the tide of that movement. It was that one man, the Shia man, Ayatollah Sistani, who gave that edict, and then that's where the change started happening. So it's the Shia, it's the lovers of Imam Hussein that changed the tide against ISIS and against extremism. Okay? So that's where we come from. That's who we are. So we're definitely not ISIS. So it's about having the confidence in yourself. So yeah, again, another example of the imagery that will be presenting people. Other questions? Yeah. So if we have any other last questions, or if there's any clarifications, or if there's
I've just got one or two opinions which may not be or relate to implement, but in terms of volunteering, I would say having some sort of a color identity on the clothes would be better for people to understand that these people are actually volunteering rather than representing a community.
Yep.
Because it shows a bit of dominance over the other people, and some people might not even want to take other people seriously.
Yeah.
Considering the age of some people being.
Yeah. I think I understand the gist.
And the other opinion is in terms of the route, since we have so a double-sided road in like the entire route, isn't there a chance we can put women and men parallel?
It's not double-sided.
Is it not?
No. So we get one side of the road, the other side remains open.
Well, just an opinion. I was just thinking if there was a chance we can put women and men parallel and the procession continues.
If we had double-sided road, that would be something we could definitely consider. Yeah. But in terms of your earlier question about the identification of volunteers, so there are badges that will be provided to all the volunteers, particularly the volunteers who are doing all the tableegh activities. There will be material badges that will be provided to you to clarify and identify yourselves.
We need to mention one key thing is that when they need to report,
yes,
and then permission there, so then they can begin.
And so that's part of, I suppose, the wrap up. So there's two last things that, unless there's any other questions, I want to say two more things.
Since we will be managing around 10,000 people, there will be a lot of plastic bottles left around. So I mean, can we spread the word through our volunteers? I mean, can we keep repeating that to friends in our community, not to leave them behind, because that leaves a very bad impression. Things like
Absolutely. So one thing that people that have been, like I said, 18 times, so that's 36 times at least, or maybe 40 odd times that I've myself given that message across. So one of the key things that we always do, and this is my sort of mantra, if you want to call it, we're here representing Imam Hussain. It is very important, it is vital for us to make sure that we leave these spaces that have been provided to us in a better condition than what we came in to receive them. So if you've brought anything with you, it goes with you. If you came here and you found rubbish, it also goes with us. Okay? Because we need to make sure that we represent Imam Hussain in the best of lights. So the two last points that I have. One, all volunteers. I realize it's difficult. It's a Monday, it's a Tuesday, it's early. But please, if you can get there early, we will be there from 11 o'clock, or 10:30. We'll be there from 10:30 onwards. If you can get there between 10:30 and 11 o'clock, it will make it so much easier to identify and to assign tasks to volunteers. Because the program starts at 11:30. If you arrive at 11:30 or 11:40, it makes it difficult. Okay? So please, as much as you can, get there between 10:30 and 11 o'clock. Okay?
I think it would be a very good idea if each of us bring a garbage bag in our pocket. I mean,
we have that arranged.
Oh,
it's already arranged. We have skips and everything. So the rubbish side of things is already arranged. Nasser Ali, who was here before, who spoke up earlier, he arranges the tips. And so there's two big rubbish trucks that come, collect all the rubbish and go. So the final point that I have is in relation to the ongoings. Okay, so this has been going on for now, like I said, the Arba'in procession is the first procession in the city, 2009. Okay, so since then, Arba'in Ashura every year. We're getting older, we're getting out of touch, society is growing, things are changing, cultures are changing. Over the last couple of years that we've decided to do these type of sessions, we've run into some really fantastic youth, really fantastic people. And, it gets said out a lot, by different organizations and different people. We encourage and we support the youth and we want to do this and we want to do that. I'm going to be one of those people as well. we want to support the youth, we want to encourage you, not to just, do what you want to do, but to take over what we're doing, okay? I do not want to be 80 years old or 60 years old and saying that I've been doing this for the last 50 years and it's been the same thing for the last 50 years. That's not the point. This is not something that I own. This is not something that we as Ashura Committee own as such. It's something that we're volunteers for, okay? And so likewise, the whole point of these exercises is to engage with people who have that motivation to then, get more involved, to become part of organizing things. So if there's ideas, so there's, for example, brother, you've got the idea about identifications and how important that is. Jump on board. Take that as a responsibility. Say that, you know what, I'm going to arrange X colored sort of, identifications or whatever it is. We'll help.